good afternoon, good evening. I don't know which one it is. It's good to be back. Robert Buxton, and it's been a little while, and I realize it's a little late. I get to talking, and that's just how it goes. So I'll give you a little extra at the end, 5 minutes. I like to start with improvising, because improvising is what they did in the past, around 200 years ago, the good old days. So I figured, why not try it. I'm not purporting to be a good improviser. I just think it's a fun activity. It's very risky too. So there are a lot of birthdays in October. Does anyone have any birthdays recently? Yeah. Okay. So I had mine. My mother's birthday. We have the same day birthday. So it's been on my mind. So today I think I'm going to do Happy Birthday in the style of a composer. You can give me a request, but perhaps not Mozart, just because everyone says Mozart. Anything, something 20th century might be nice. Any composer you'd like?
Tchaikovsky.
You want Tchaikovsky? Well, Tchaikovsky's pretty easy because I just do. That's not original. I think Victor Borge did something like that. Maybe one more. Any Claude Debussy. Okay. Let's try Claude Debussy. French Impressionism. Okay. So, by the way, we have a special guest here. I'll talk about in a moment. But So, last time one of these dampers kept giving way, so I'm going to do a very short piece before the long one to make sure that the dampers don't go on. If not, we have a contraption I can use. So, this is, I'm still doing all violin music because I'm obsessed with the violin, but I'm also practical, and I'm too lazy to switch instruments. It's too much trouble, so stick to the piano. I have played with violinists, but that's just wonderful. But it's also hard to recruit a violinist for every performance, so tricky. So I'm going to play this short piece by Gossec, who was an 18th century French composer. This is from his opera Recital, and it's most frequently played as a violin encore of sorts. Gossec is not so well known today. I think in France he's quite popular. He lived at the time of Mozart, and he was friends with Mozart. But to me, Gossec's music is Versailles. I mean, I can just picture the powdered wigs, the architecture of Versailles. And it's a world that, for better or for worse, was to be gone shortly after this piece was written with the French Revolution. So here it is. This is the Gossec Gavotte. I find it to be a very funny piece because it has a musical hiccup of sorts in it. Here's what I mean. Imagine you're in Versailles or somewhere and you're having a very polite conversation with someone very sophisticated, but you have the hiccups, and they just, So you have this kind of thing, that's how. It's just, and that hiccup idea just keeps coming back at odd moments. So here is a short piece by Gusek. I'm going to play something quite long. This is going to be the main course, so to speak, of today, the meat and potatoes of the evening or the afternoon. I'm going to do the first movement of Beethoven's Violin Concerto, but arranged for piano, obviously, by Beethoven himself. Now, there's a reason he adapted this piece for the piano. He wrote the Violin Concerto in 1806, and the first performance with violinist Franz Clement was a disaster. I think it was mainly because much of the audience fell asleep after the first movement. Because for Beethoven, it's quite a meditative piece. I'll talk more about that in a second, but what happened was, after the first movement, which is 25 minutes or so long, that's what I'm going to do now. I mean, you could drive to Burlington, or the park, or Winston-Salem. It's quite long. So the violinist, Franz Clement, noticed people had fallen asleep. He took his violin, turned it upside down, and improvised a lively fiddle tune to wake everyone up. So you can imagine Beethoven was not thrilled with all of this. And at the urging of his good friend, musical colleague, Muzio Clementi, wrote all those wonderful sonatas and sonatinas, he decided to do this piano arrangement. What I've done is I haven't really changed it, I'm just trying to include what the orchestra does, because I can't bring an orchestra here, unfortunately. I don't have space. But I just want to say a few words about Beethoven in general, because, well, first of all, the piece specifically, this violin concerto, he wrote it when he knew he was losing his hearing. So that adds a whole other layer to the placid, serene quality of this piece. It's more than that, because underneath that meditative exterior is this kind of volcano. Beethoven, around this time, he wrote a document called the Heilige Stab, testimony, where he contemplated taking his own life because he thought, why go on? I can't hear, especially for a musician. Can you imagine? But he somehow found the strength to keep going, and by the very end of his life, he had almost no hearing, and he could just hear the music or picture it in his head. So that's what it was. I think a few thoughts about Beethoven. Beethoven is so famous and so iconic, like the Eiffel Tower or something, that we might not even think about what he's all about. So Leonard Bernstein said this. He said, Beethoven did not write remarkable melodies or tunes. I mean, something like this. That's just an arpeggio, or what's that by itself? It's just a rhythm. But it's what he does with it. This is what Bernstein says, that he turns it into some incredible magic thing. And Beethoven did it through sheer effort. I mean, he would revise and rewrite, and there are even candle wax stains, wine stains, tear stains on his drafts, because he really struggled with every note, and the result is glorious. Finally, I had a professor who said, he said, to him, Beethoven is Tolstoy in music. And what he meant by that, he said that both of those creators, those artists, they go beyond just being beautiful. They are beautiful at their work, but it has an ethical side, it has a human side, because Tolstoy, in one of his essays, What is Art?, he said, why do we even bother with things like music or operas? Why do we bother when there's real suffering in the world, genuine suffering? And it's a good point. Think about it. And he says, if one person walks away with just a little bit more sensitivity, a little more compassion in their heart, it's done its job. And I think Beethoven really is that kind of. Anyway, so I don't want to ramble here, but I'm going to play the first movement of the Beethoven violin concerto in a piano arrangement. nervous today because I'm nervous in the presence of great music and great people who make great music. So I'd like to embarrass somebody. Madame Jane Ericourt is here, and her son. And, may I talk about you a little bit? Who is it? Everybody knows you. Yeah. Well, Jane Ericourt is a musical great. She's a celebrity, and I'm very grateful to you. I think it was you that put me in contact with Jane. So it's a story, if I might share it. So I think I've played this piece for you before, but I'm doing this violin program, and well, there's a piece that violinists play. It's called Pièce en forme de habanero, piece in the style of habanero. It's a Cuban dance, originally Cuban dance. It's by Ravel, and the arrangement is by Daniel Ericourt. And I was in a rush. I went to play the piece in Greensboro. And I'd read Daniel Ericourt was a French pianist, French composer, knew Debussy, knew Ravel very well, worked with them. And, but I hadn't read the whole biography. I was silly that I didn't, because a lady in Whitestone it was at, she said, the Ericourts were my neighbors right here in Greensboro. I almost fainted. I said, small world. And sure enough, yes, Daniel Ericourt taught at UNC Greensboro, was artist in residence right here. And Jane's here right now with us. And so it was just interesting talking to people in Greensboro. And then through Wellspring through here, I wrote, my phone number and a short note, and I thought, it's not going to probably amount to anything, but I would really love to learn something about music from Jane. By the way, one of Jane's teachers, Edwin Hughes, I have music books where he's the editor, Edwin Hughes. That's what we're talking about here. This is why. So you understand why I'm nervous. So I gave my phone number to you like several months ago, and then I was at the CBS. This was recently. I was at CBS waiting on an endless line. It was never going to end, and I was really flustered actually. And I get this call from a Greensboro number, and at the time I didn't think of it. I thought it might be something about my car's extended warranty or something. I really didn't. And this very distinguished voice says, Robert. And I said, yes. I'm in CBS, okay? Says, this is Jane Ericourt, and I'd like to meet you. And here I am in CBS. I don't know if you're, but I couldn't really form a. I mean, imagine you were at CBS or Walmart and you were online and it was never ending. And you get a call from a number, and the person on the other says, hello, this is Johannes Brahms. Or this is, how would you feel? So I said, I'll get back in touch with you. And I very stupidly, I said, do you have my phone number? And Jane said, well, yes, obviously I'm calling you. So anyway, I want to dedicate this piece, of course, to the Ericourts, to Jane, to Daniel. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I thought, now Jane is here, so I really should play this. I'm going to do my best. It's a beautiful piece. I'll talk about the piece a little bit. It's, Ravel himself, he was a French composer. We think of him as an impressionist, but he was really sui generis. He was doing his own thing. And part of that, I think, is because he was Basque. I read about this. He grew up, his mother spoke Spanish at home. That was his first language. So I think that the influence of Spanish music is always there. I think of bolero, right? And this piece is no exception. Habanera, in addition to being a pepper, if you like that, spicy pepper, it's also a dance with a rhythm like, bum, bum, bum. If you like opera, there's a famous one, Carmen, which I won't attempt to sing. It's out of my range. So, okay, forget. This is why I don't sing. And yeah, it's a beautiful. And Cuban music is a wonderful mix of the music of Spain, music of West Africa. It's all kind of mixed together. And then habanero was all the rage in Europe at the early 20th century. So, anyway, as I said, I have butterflies because so I'm going to try to do this. And one of these days, Jane lent me a bunch of compositions that Daniel has written. It's been published, and I would like to learn some, if not all of them. It's really beautiful music. It needs to be played, needs to be heard. And he was, right here, local. So, all right, here it is.
So you're going to come back and play those?
Oh, well,
Yes.
if you'll tolerate the corny jokes and everything, I'd love to come back. No pressure. There is a great cellist I like her, and she said, we ought to be nervous wrecks in the presence of this kind of music. We really should be. So maybe I'm doing something right here. So I'm going to play a couple more short pieces and then some little gospel. I actually think that clock's a little faster than mine. So anyway, I can stay a little over. Is that okay? I don't know. Okay. Well, does dinner start exactly at 5? Okay, well, I wouldn't want to deprive anyone of food because I like music, but food is really where it's at. So, but about the habanero, one more thing. I played it somewhere, and a lady told me something. I really liked what she said. She said, I imagined that I was in Morocco when you played. I thought that was a very interesting image, and I like thinking of music in a pictorial sense. Like, there was a friend of my mother's who's a Russian painter. My mother's from Russia. I'm going to play a Russian piece next. So, and I was 14 years old. I was at their home and looking at this abstract art, and this another Russian painter, his name was Grisha. He was a big bear of a man. He came to me. He probably had a couple of vodkas, and he puts his arm around me and he says, "It's beautiful, no?" And I said, "Can you teach me to understand it?" And he looked at me and I thought, uh-oh. He grabbed me and shook me and he said, "No, you have to feel. You have to feel." And I like that because it was, there's no secret. So that's why I say when you listen, I like what that lady told me. I felt like I was in Morocco. Trust your gut feeling when you listen to a piece. What does it evoke for you? And that's really a listening experience, in my opinion. So I'm going to play this Tchaikovsky piece called Melody in E flat. He was originally thinking to put it in the violin concerto, his own violin concerto in D major, like Beethoven's, modeled after Beethoven's. I guess he decided for him that this piece was not good enough. So it was a pun on Russian culture. You know, Boris Godunov? I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, it's called a dad joke. Okay, so at any rate, he rejected it from the violin concerto, but wrote it as a separate, as a standalone violin piece. And how to describe Russian music? I mean, I don't know if you can generalize. I think Tchaikovsky's peers considered him not Russian enough, whatever that means. People like Balakirev, he was not a great guy, Balakirev, I have stories. But they thought Tchaikovsky was not, folk influenced enough. So, but here's something to think about. I think Russian music tends to have very wide and long melodies. This is what my mother and my late uncle Boris taught me about Russian music. I mean, you listen to this from Rachmaninoff. Famous melody, but it's still going. When does it end? Yeah, but it goes on and on and on and on. It's like when you read Tolstoy or Dostoevsky's, like one sentence per one page. It's just, another thing I've learned as a quick tangent is that, Russians like to tell long and endless stories. My father is a 9th, 10th generation coastal southeastern Virginian. So my parents are quite different in a way. But at a certain age, I went to some reunions with my dad's friends. And I don't remember this, but apparently I was like 4 or 5 years old. I came to my mother and said, "Mom, Dad is not crazy. Everybody tells long stories just like him." So the point is, I realized early on that the Southern culture and the Russian culture is not really that different in some ways. But I'm rambling. I'm going to play this Tchaikovsky melody in E flat, originally for violin. It all is, sort of. perhaps I'll do one more quiet one, then a little noisy one to close. I'll give you a choice. I can't pick. I get indecisive. Do you want to hear? Well, there's more. I mean, do you want to hear Massenet meditation from Thais? Do you want to hear? What's the name of that piece? A Fritz Kreisler piece, a short one. Viennese Caprice. Out of those two, what do you want?
I thought you said you were doing a gospel.
Oh, I will. I'm going to get to that. Oh, don't worry. No. It's it's Fritz Kreisler's gospel music. You know. Okay, maybe I'll do the. I'll do the meditation from Thais. There's some French music one because we have the French influence here. So, the meditation. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll do that. I don't know. I'll do Fritz Kreisler. Let's do Kreisler. I don't know. I'm just so Fritz Kreisler. Forgive me. Sometimes I get indecisive. So this is an early work of Fritz Kreisler. It's his tribute to Vienna, the city that he loved very much, where he was from. I think that you don't get more Viennese than Kreisler. You have Johann Strauss Jr. waltzes, Wiener Schnitzel, and Kreisler. I think that's really, I mean, I'm not trying to, So, this piece is somewhere in between a lullaby and a waltz. And Kreisler was a wonderful person also. You can hear it in his recordings, the warmth of his violin playing. See it in his face, too. He's always smiling in pictures, And there's one thing he would say as a sort of motto that I love. And he said, and I tell myself this when I go play for people. He says, I never go to perform, I just go to see my friends. That's it. And I love that because that's who he was. So this is his tribute to Vienna, the Viennese Caprice Vienna. I'll do the others next time. also to dedicate to Jane. I'm going to play, this is a Spanish piece. Jane told me that she and Daniel love Spain, very much the culture of Spain. And among so many stories, I mean, she was telling me, well, Daniel was over at Debussy's house one time. I'm thinking, you know, and she said, yeah, we would, see our good friend Andreas Segovia. So, and Spain is wonderful. I was there briefly. So this is a piece, it's actually by a Cuban composer. It's called Malagueña by Ernesto Lecuona. Yeah. Now, I played the Malagueña by Albéniz here. I never thought I would learn this. I have my teacher, Solomon Mikowski, who's from Cuba, and he would gently remind me with his accent, which I do quite well. He didn't think I did, but I think I do. He would say, Robert, how can you play Cuban music? You're not even from Cuba. I said, awesome. But a lady in Raleigh every time I would go play in this place, she would ask me to learn it. And after about 6 months, I started to feel very guilty, so I learned it. But even it's Cuban, yet it's a Spanish theme. Malagueña means a woman from Malaga. And Malaga is a city in the south of Spain that's noted for its flamenco music. So I'm going to do what I can with this. I clearly am not from Cuba, but I'll try to, or Spain, but try to bring, because what Jane was saying was that the way of life in Spain, and the food, and the climate too, is just wonderful. So, and I agree very much, so here it is. couple gospel. Do you know the song "Crying in the Chapel"? It's an old gospel song. Mahalia Jackson used to sing it. Elvis sang it. So we're gonna switch gears. Obviously, I play Southern gospel too. Why? Because the whole time I was growing up playing the classical music that my mother loves, my father, being a true Southerner, would always nudge me, when are you going to play some real music? So, well, I mean, he was being tongue-in-cheek about it, but so I picked up that too, somehow. So, here it is. This sounds a lot like a Duke Ellington song called In a Sentimental Mood. So I have to be careful not to start playing that, so. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so. Maybe one more real quick. I did start late, so I feel bad. So, okay, very quick. I'm going to do He's Got the Whole World in His Hands, an old script. And I promise this will be it. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for coming.